There's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
It's the Sitting Sportside podcast, exclusively on 1045theteam.com.
Oh, no! Because there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in baseball! No crying!
Welcome into the Sittin Sportside podcast MLB preseason finale. Right? That's what this is right here. It's the the National League West preview. And I'm Eric Handman, of course, here on the Sittin Sportside podcast on 1045theteam.com and youtube.com/team1045. Let me preface this real quick by saying you can find all the other 5 division previews on 1045theteam.com, the podcast tabs, under the podcast tab, Sittin Sportside Podcast, and on youtube.com/C1045, the Sittin Sportside Podcast playlist. So if you haven't heard those, go listen to those if your favorite team's on there, or if you're just trying to listen to this one, listen through or skip to close to the end of the podcast where I give you my World Series playoff predictions, my other 2 wildcard teams from each league, and then MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year predictions. So without further ado, let's start off with the National League West preview, starting in 5th place. And let me preface this by saying I said on the American League West podcast that I thought the American League West is going to be the toughest division in the American League and the best division and most competitive division, with a lot of teams at the top competing for first place. Let me second that in the National League. I think it's the same in the National League. I think there's 3 really good teams possibly in the NL Central, but I think that the toughest division, most competitive division, will be the National League West. So a lot of good baseball on the West Coast if you're looking to stay up here on the East Coast and the Capital Region. If you're looking to stay up and watch some good baseball, possibly on the MLB Network, ESPN, wherever you may be watching games, maybe you have the MLB TV, West Coast is going to give you some good games, I think, because there's a lot of good teams out there in both leagues. So let's start with my 5th place team. Similar to the Oakland Athletics, kind of by default and where they've been over the last few years, it's the San Diego Padres. And they went out and did some things in the offseason themselves. They traded for Freddie Galvis from the Philadelphia Phillies to take over as their shortstop, although they have a really good prospect in Fernando Tatis Jr. waiting in the wings. But, even though he might be making his debut mid-season, Galvis will be a very good stopgap. They go and they sign Eric Hosmer to a long-term deal, which was a big-time move for this team. They had enough outfield players to be able to field an outfield without moving Will Myers to right field and keeping Myers at first base. But getting Hosmer adds to this lineup and puts him in a good position to be a very good 4-guy or 3-guy to Will Myers wherever they decide to bat, both of them. And so that's a pretty good 1-2 punch there with Myers the righty and Hosmer the lefty. Now, Manny Margot, I really was hoping to have a real big breakout season last year. He did have a good enough season to warrant some eyes being opened, but this could be the real year where he steps up and becomes a really great leadoff hitter and steals a lot of bases. So look out for him to be a good player. And Jose Pirela, a former New York Yankee, and fun fact about Pirela, he had the single to start in 2014 to start Derek Jeter's final inning at Yankee Stadium, and he had the single to start off that inning. Antone Richardson pinch ran for him. Gardner bunts him over to second, and Richardson scores on the now famous epic moment of Derek Jeter's last game at Yankee Stadium. I digress. Jose Pirela, former Yankee, he had a really good year last year down the stretch, so he's a guy to look out for as well. I think he can do a really good job in left field being an everyday player because he just hits, man. He rakes at certain times, but he can struggle. But when he's on, he's on. And then outside of Will Myers in right field, you have a nice little power guy who can play left or right field in Hunter Renfroe. I really like the power potential in him. So look for really a really solid outfield and depth as well. Carlos Asuhe at second base. I already mentioned Galvis, and then Chase Headley, the former Yankee, of course, will be back in San Diego manning the hot corner. And, Austin Hedges at catcher, they're all serviceable, but they're not going to be these great hitters, but they're serviceable enough to get the job done. That's why I think this lineup can really produce some runs, especially with Hosmer now, a good RBI guy and a good average, can hit the occasional home run, right? 15 to 20 home runs. He actually has been over the 20 home run mark in a really tough ballpark the last 2 seasons, hitting 25, matching career. Those are both career highs, 25 in each of the last 2 seasons. So he's able, maybe he'll be around the same area here. Not like it's a huge difference between Kaufman and Petco. So rotation wise, they are kind of in a weird department here. Dinelson Lamet has an elbow issue, and the severity is kind of unknown. I kind of just mentioned in the previous podcast I did on the AL West. In that podcast, I heard about, I was talking about AJ Puck's soreness. Well, he has to get Tommy John surgery. Put that in the little comments over there. And here I'm talking about Dinelson Lamet, a guy I think when he comes back could be a really good pitcher, high strikeout potential here in San Diego. But the unknown severity of the elbow issue is concerning. Past that, though, Clayton Richard, Luis Perdomo, Brian Mitchell, Colin Ray, that's why they're in last place. Similar to the Athletics, right? The potential of this pitching staff really isn't that high, and the floor isn't that high either. So there's a lot of concerns about this team and the pitching rotation. I do like Clayton Richard in certain capacity, but he can struggle a lot. Same thing with Perdomo. Brian Mitchell, the former Yankee, also came over in the Headley deal. I think it actually be the best pitcher on this rotation if Dinelson Lamet does not come back from this elbow issue. So that being said, look for some other pitchers to get opportunities like Matt Strahm, Robbie Erlin, Jordan Lyles possibly, and see what they can do with those. Strahm out of those three is the one I'm looking forward to the most. The bullpen, Brown Hand has actually done a decent job. Another former Yankee, Kirby Yates, is in that bullpen, so they're okay, but they're not great. And that's why they're my 5th place team, because there's not a lot of upside, but they have 2 really good prospects. I mentioned Galvis, did I say Galvis? Fernando Tatis Jr. Hopefully I got it right the first time I said it. Fernando Tatis Jr., son of former Met Fernando Tatis, and Luis Urias at second base as well. So they might be able to give him a spark. And talking about the lack of pitching, they do have a couple young pitching prospects that might actually get the light of day in the summer. So maybe they'll come up and do their thing as well. I won't spend too much time on them, but that's why I have the team in 5th place. The pitching isn't deep enough, and even if young kids do come up, not enough experience to really rely on them. 4th place, I'm going to put the Colorado Rockies. They're a playoff team from last season. Obviously, this means I don't have them in the playoffs this season, and you know what? The only reason why I have is because of the lack of consistency. Because it's not like what we saw last year was something that we didn't see before, right? We've known this could be a really good offense, and they do put together good offensive numbers. I guess it was more more than I guess. It was the pitching that really put them there. And it's not like I don't think John Gray can build off of his breakout year last year, and guys like the local product, Jeff Hoffman, Kyle Freeland, Chad Bettis, Yerman Marquez, and Tyler Anderson can't put stuff together. But I don't ultimately have enough confidence to think, you know what, this team's going to be able to really put themselves in a position to get where they were last season. I think the hot start to the year, they fizzled off a little bit, right? I mean, same thing with the Diamondbacks, which we'll get to them wherever I place them. But they kind of both had hot starts, and obviously no one was going to keep up with the Dodgers and the record pace they were on. But they kind of built a big enough lead on that wild card to where they couldn't blow it. I mean, they still went out and won ball games, but I guess I just don't have enough confidence in the pitching being as good enough with a lot more competition this season, especially within the division. Padres are a little bit better, and I think the Giants are a lot better than they were last year, especially with certain people that they brought in. But sticking to the Rockies now, I think the offense is going to be just as good or even better. And can it be even better? I don't know, but we know what this offense can do. And Carlos Gonzalez comes back. Charlie Blackmon, MVP-like numbers last season. Ian Desmond, he's a really good hitter as well, and really still haven't really seen his full tilt potential so far in his Colorado uniform. Nolan Arenado has been robbed of 2 MVPs, in my personal opinion. Not necessarily last season, but the year before that, and he led the league in home runs and RBIs, at least tied for home runs and RBIs in 2015 and 2016. So we know what he can do. You want to go over his last 3 seasons. In 2015, 42 home runs, 130 RBIs. 2016, 41 home runs, 133 RBIs. And last year, 37 home runs, 130 RBIs. He's had 130 RBIs in 3 straight seasons. This kid is amazing. And he has the best glove at third base. Now I'm getting passionate. This guy should be an MVP at some point. Will I have him as my MVP? I don't know. You can check the end of this podcast to see if I do. But spoiler alert, just based on the way that he's treated for playing in Colorado, similar to how Larry Walker in his Hall of Fame bid is being treated, probably not going to win the MVP. But once again, he'll have a great season. I'll put him at 125 RBIs and 39 home runs. We'll see if he can top that. Trevor Story, he had a great story to begin 2016. Injuries kind of hindered him last year, but still a great shortstop option. Luckily, maybe Ian Desmond can play a good backup shortstop if he goes down, so there's a lot of versatility here. Same thing with Ryan McMahon, the new first baseman. He can play second and third baseman just in case anything happens. DJ LeMahieu's not going anywhere, but if he gets injured, and he's great at the top of that lineup, let's not forget about that. But if he's injured, Ryan McMahon can take over second base, and Desmond can move to first place with Gerardo Parra, opening things up in the outfield. He'll probably platoon, or maybe Desmond will play first base if McMahon struggles. But I love this kid, Ryan McMahon. And he had a really good AAA numbers, and he's going to have a great bat, like a lot of people do, at Coors Field. So I like this lineup a lot. Chris Iannetta coming in. I mean, Lucroy wasn't as good as advertised, so the good news for the Rockies is Iannetta can be just as good as Lucroy was for them. Last thing about the offense, David Dahl. We'll start off in AAA, but if he can, get an opportunity to play here, I don't know whether on lack of performance by one of the outfielders or an injury, he's also a really good option for Tapia as well. So they have a lot of options. So the offense isn't going to be the issue. It's going to be the pitching. And then Wade Davis, former Royals closer, replaces Greg Holland, former Royals closer on this team. So I think you get maybe even a small upgrade in the closer role. Brian Shaw also helps out there. Still have Jake McGee, Adam Ottavino, Mike Dunn. So the bullpen actually is pretty good, but they still play half their games at Coors Field. And if the pitching isn't as good, as it was last year, that's why I have them kind of in 4th place. But once again, similar to how I saw the Rangers, it was more of in the AL West. It was more of, all right, if I don't have the Padres coming in last place, who do I have coming in last place? This was the default team I went to, similar to how I went to the Rangers. But similar to how I view the Rangers, they're also a team that the Rockies are that are going to compete in this division and be a very tough game for every other team in the National League West. That being said, let's move on to my 3rd place team, and they're back, baby. Bruce Bochy's not going to have 2 losing seasons in a row, even with Mad Bum's injury out 6 to 8 weeks, right? I still think the San Francisco Giants are going to have a really good year. Going to be above 500, whether it's 82 and 80, or higher. They're going to be above 500 this year, bringing in Andrew McCutchen and Evan Longoria, 2 veterans, but they're not washed up. They're still ready to play. They're still going to be a huge part of this team, and they're going to take pressure off guys like Hunter Pence, and even pressure off guys like Joe Panik and Brandon Crawford, who kind of felt, and Brandon Belt, who maybe felt like they needed to carry this offense a little bit more. And to some extent, Buster Posey, they'll take pressure off them. So all those guys are really good hitters, and I think we'll have bounce back years in terms of Crawford and Pence. And then guys like Longoria and McCutchen, I know you're kind of lacking in this left-handed power bat. You have Brandon Belt, but do you really need a left-hander? I mean, these guys are hit so well that I think that this lineup is going to be so much improved. And I even like what they have going on in Austin Jackson out there in the outfield. So they have other options, but with Jackson, I think we'll do a good job. Maybe Gorkys Hernandez could do well for them, because we've seen Gregor Blanco hold down a starting role on a winning team here. Steven Duggar could have a really good season as well if he gets an opportunity. So I don't think the lack of that good great center fielder, will hold them back. I think they have a good enough team, and really Buster Posey as the catcher. Nick Hundley is a good backup. It'd be a better backup maybe than they even had in the past. So look for this team to really get back on track offensively. But one could argue that even though the offense was down, and of course Hundley was there last year and did a good job in a backup role. But even if this team, some would argue that the pitching was the problem last year. Bumgarner has the dirt bike accident, and Johnny Cueto wasn't as good. Samardzija had his classic high strikeout, hot but also high ERA. And while Bumgarner and Samardzija are out to start the season, I still think that they'll be fine. I think Cueto will get a little bit back down to earth. I think that you're not necessarily going to get 2015 Cueto, where the guy had 2.62 ERA, or 2016 Cueto, where he had a 2.79. But I think you're more around 2015 Kansas City. No, excuse me. Sorry, I'm a little off here. I think you're still getting a more of a mixture between the two. So I guess that put him at a 3.44 ERA. The 2015 season was kind of a weird double split for Cueto because he was 2.62 with the Reds, but a 4.76 with the Royals. So that 3.44 is more where I expect for him to be this season with the San Francisco Giants. Chris Stratton, I think, is an underrated guy. Ty Black, I think, could be a good pitcher for them, and he has, great potential. Tyler Beatty, I don't know if he's going to get his starts out of spring training. He might just be, rushed into that role at this point with the injuries. I think he's a good pitcher. So once they get these guys back on track, everything will be fine. But I know that the pitching was the problem last year, and that's why they kind of got into the hole. It could be the same thing this year, but I trust Bochy enough to manage this rotation well enough, and the bullpen as well. Even though Mark Melanson's also got some injury problems. Sam Dyson, Hunter Strickland, Tony Watson. I think that you're looking at an improved bullpen, but there still could be, Watson's a huge acquisition. So the offense could carry it. I think because the lack of there wasn't enough production offensively to carry the bad pitching. The addition to Longoria and McCutchen, I think, gives them enough edge to hang in there until Mad Bum and Samardzija get back. So that's why I do have them in third place over the Rockies, but my confidence in Bochy and my confidence in this offense might be a little too high, and that's why they might slip into fourth or even fifth again like they were last season. But I don't believe it. I have them in third place. Second place is the team that is introducing the second team, I believe, to be introducing the Humidor, and that is the Arizona Diamondbacks. And listen, this is a team that really could put things together and come in first place. I really believe it. And that's why I am changing my pick. What is this, an audible, baby? Yes, I'm changing my pick. They're my first place team. So let me talk about the Dodgers first. I have them coming in second place. And this probably has a lot to do with mainly the injury to Jacob Turner. And maybe not necessarily the confidence. This is a big change right now because this is a team that really put things together last year. They're going to be good enough still. Chris Taylor with that breakout year last year, I think they're still kind of like, is he going to be for real this year? I still have trust enough in him. Matt Kemp actually being on the roster after it looked like it was just going to be a salary dump, but they keep him and Yasiel Puig. I think there's enough depth there with Kike Hernandez being able to play out there once Turner comes back, possibly with Forsythe being at second base. Still have Chase Utley there. Alex Verdugo has a possibility to come up if they need an extra outfielder. They still have Jock Peterson, and then even Andrew Tolles, if he's healthy enough, could be a bit, an outfielder that does some good things. He did have a decent spring training coming off that injury. So there's enough offensively. Still have Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager. Turner will be back at some point this season. Austin Barnes is actually a really good catcher, along with Yasmani Grandal as hitting catchers. So they're still going to be good enough offensively. That's why I still have them coming in second place. But the main reason why is because I don't know if they can be as good as they were for that stretch last year. And then you have a really weird stretch where they lost a lot of games, and I believe it was late August, early September, where they just went on a massive losing streak. It didn't make any sense. And so that's why I kind of look at this and I say, you know what, I'm going to put the Dodgers in second place. They lost Turner here, and I don't really know if I can really trust them to have as good of a stretch as they did last year. Alex Wood was an aberration in that rotation. Can he really have as good of an ERA as he had last year? Kenta Maeda, there's still concerns with him. Rich Hill and Hinjun Ryu, still good pitchers. I have more faith in Hill, but he's up there in age than I do Ryu, because Ryu also has the injury problems. They do have good options to use past that with Walker Buehler in the minor leagues. If he gets some starts this year, I would definitely think he could have a really good rookie campaign. And then obviously Clayton Kershaw is going to hold things down, and you have a good chance to win one every 5 days. Obviously, you need to win more than that to be a great baseball team, but they're going to be in every single game that Clayton Kershaw is pitching, just about. And so the offense is good enough, but I have them coming in second place because I think that the Arizona Diamondbacks are really good. Real quick about the bullpen. The bullpen is still really good with Kenley Jansen, Josh Fields, Tony Cingrani, so Yimi Garcia, Pedro Baez, Ross Stripling, an underrated part of that bullpen. So I really still think that they're good. They're good enough. And Kenley Jansen's the best closer in the game, in my opinion. So I still think they're really good, but I have them in second place because of the Humidor that I mentioned. So to Arizona, the Humidor might, affect their good hitters. Goldschmidt might not have as many home runs. Pollock, all of them. Jake Lamb might not have as many home runs. That doesn't concern me because these are all still good hitters. I don't think it takes away as many as maybe people are maybe projecting. I think these guys, when they get it, they get it. How many cheapies did they hit this year? Last year. I don't really know that. I don't know any facts about any quote-unquote cheapies. But really, how many cheapies did this team hit? So that's why I still like their lineup a lot with Pollock, Goldschmidt, like I mentioned. David Peralta is a guy at the top of that order who is really underrated. Steven Souza, when he comes back from his right pectoral strain, he's a decent replacement from what they lost in J.D. Martinez. Not going to get you the same amount of home runs by any means, but when they lost, when they had a great stretch with J.D. last year. After the trade, he could really bring that in. Gerard Dyson's not a bad fill-in terms of the speedster. Chris Owings has an opportunity to make actually a showing out there in right field. They sent down Yasmani Tomas, so I still think could be a factor on this team. They bring in Alex Avila as a veteran catcher. I think that could be a really good move for them. Ketel Marte, Nick Ahmed in the middle infield are really good defensively, as well as I think Marte has a really high upside bat. And then I mentioned Jake Lamb, of course, and the power numbers are really high there. So I think the offense is still really, really good here. And that's why I think the Humidor doesn't necessarily hurt them as much as it helps them. Or so I think it helps them more because I think Greinke, Robbie Ray, Taijuan Walker, Patrick Corbin, and Zach Godley are a very solid rotation. Very, very solid. The velocity in Greinke has been down, but I think there's nothing really to be too much concerned here. And the reason why the Humidor helps them is because the ball's not going to be flying out as much, as much as it did. And you might be saying, okay, well, if it's not going to hurt their offense, why would it hurt another team's offense? But that's my point, though. I think that their offense is better than a lot of other teams' offenses, or at least on the same level as the Dodgers and the Rockies. And so that being said, I think that will help the pitchers let up less home runs, less big-time hits, and they already have a really good rotation at the top there with Ray and Greinke, and then I think Godley with a huge breakout year has Kluber upside, and I think I've said this before, that by Kluber upside, I don't necessarily mean he's going to be Corey Kluber, but I think that, with the cutter and whatnot, he's got a really good chance of being a really good pitcher as a Cy Young candidate at some point in his career. Maybe not this year, but this year I do expect him to still have a good year. And then in that back end of the bullpen, they're going to have Brad Boxberger be their closer. I still think Archie Bradley is the right move here, but they make it Boxberger and not take Bradley out of his usual eighth inning role. Fine, whatever you want to do you, Torey Lovullo. But I think the option here would be Avery Bradley. I mean, why not make him a ninth inning guy? I mean, I know we've seen this with the Yankees, and Dylan Betances can't be a ninth inning guy. I don't see that in Archie Bradley. I see a guy who steps up to the moment and is a great ninth inning guy. The guy hit a triple in a postseason game last year. He's a pitcher, a relief pitcher. He got in that bat and hit a triple. I don't think the moment's too big for this guy. But that being said, that might be some personal vendetta because he's on my fantasy team. But I think Bradley and Boxberger will still be fine at the end of that bullpen. And Jorge De La Rosa as a a long relief pitcher, I think he did a really good job last year. So we can look for him to do the same this year as well. So that's why I have them in first place. I think they're going to build off of a great year last year, and a healthy offense is one of the better ones. And they're on the same level. I would give Colorado a little bit of an edge, but they're on the same level there. I think they're just right behind them and right with the Dodgers as well. And I think the pitching is going to actually might be better than the Dodgers this year, outside of Kershaw being the best out of any of the 10. I think that their starting rotation is actually going to be one of the best in the major leagues. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I have given you 6 playoff teams in the National League. I've given you the division winners, Washington Nationals, Chicago Cubs, and a twist, Arizona Diamondbacks. So that's 3 teams that have made the playoffs last year, but not the same 3 division winners. 2 of them are. And I have the same 3 division winners, though, in the American League, in the Boston Red Sox, the Cleveland Indians, and the Houston Astros. So 6 division winners from last year. I have 5 of them again this year. We'll see if that happens, because it just seems to be that one team that kind of comes out of nowhere. And I won't say comes out of nowhere because we see these teams. We see them coming. but which ones are going to, it could be that one that's like, wow, they won a division. Is it going to happen this year? Or is it going to be more of the chalk that looks like I kind of went? But this is my actual predictions. This is what I think is going to happen. And so let's get the wild card teams in each league. And let me preface it by saying I think there's obvious one for each league, right? They're going to be the one that I say is going to host the playoff game, and you're going to be like, no, duh, we knew that was going to happen. So starting with the American League, I have the New York Yankees hosting the playoff game. And in what seems to be like something that I really, really don't want to do, I have the same exact 5. The same exact 5 teams in the playoffs. I'm not necessarily saying it's the same seeds because I'm not ranking the top 3 division winners. But what I'm saying here is that I have the Yankees hosting the Minnesota Twins in a playoff game in October. So I had the same 5 teams from the playoffs last year. And we know from the past in Major League Baseball, the parity is real. This isn't going to happen, right? There's going to be a team that's going to have a really good year, that's going to win the division over somebody, like a Los Angeles Angels, like a Texas Rangers, or I like the AL West. I'm using all AL West teams. So like a Seattle Mariners, maybe even a Toronto Blue Jays. I will say I don't necessarily see it from any other Central team. But there's going to be this one team that, because this can't happen twice, right? The same 3 division winners in the same wild card playing game. But that's how I have it, and the reason why, I've already given you my reasons of how much I like the Yankees. You can listen to the AL East podcast, but to reset on the Minnesota Twins, it has a lot to do with playing the White Sox, the Royals, and the Detroit Tigers a lot, because I think the Tigers and the Royals, to me, I think are the no-brainer bottom 2 teams in the American League. And if so, you're getting more games against them. We've seen this in the past. Teams who aren't necessarily the best can make the playoffs because of that. We saw the Cleveland Indians make it in 2013, in my personal opinion, because they were playing bad teams. So this could happen with the Twins. I still think the Twins are a good team. And so that could mean that they have a better record than the New York Yankees, because I think that the Orioles, Blue Jays, and even the Rays could be a tougher opponent than a few of them. I think the White Sox might be better than the Rays, but still, I think you're looking at easier, quote-unquote, easier opponents, because they're still going to be able to get some games on you. You're not going to win every single one, but that's why I like the Twins. So while I still keep it as the same 5 and the Yankees hosting the playoff game, maybe the division is so much a factor, even more of a factor than I'm giving it credit for, and the Twins could have a better record than the Yankees and actually be hosting that playoff game. I do think it will be close, though, and I have the Angels in second place in the West. I think they'll be close. And give me the Blue Jays and Orioles making a late push in September, as well as the Mariners. And with the double wild card, really, a lot of teams are still in it, and I think the Rangers will be in it as well. So, of course, that's a lot of teams to be in it. That's my prediction, those 5 teams. National League, the division winners. Naturally, I'm having the Dodgers host the playoff game, at Chavez Ravine. That's going to happen. That's why I have them in second place and whatnot. So that really comes down to, all right, Eric, you have San Francisco Giants in third place in the West. You have the Cardinals in second place in the Central. And you have the Phillies in second place in the East. And you may ask yourself, out of those 3, who is the least likely that you, the listener, personally feel is going to make the playoffs out of those 3 teams? Now ask yourself, is Eric bold enough to put that team in the playoffs? And I'm going to answer it for you. I am. My second wild card team is the Philadelphia Phillies. This goes along with the theme of teams that kind of get there a little bit too early. I think the Twins are right on that theme with you. They're a team that people didn't necessarily think they're going to make the playoffs last year, but they made it as a second wild card last season. But did it have to do with playing in a bad division? I think it kind of had to do with playing in a relatively bad division. Did they deserve it? Yes, but they played in a bad division and they made the playoffs. This is a bad division in the NL East. I think they're still going to get a lot. The Marlins are the worst team there, probably in that entire league. I think it's not necessarily an argument. I think it's just kind of well known. And while I think that they could have a better season maybe than people are projecting, which still isn't a good season. the Marlins are going to be an easier team to beat. Not a lot of people are high on the Braves either. I'm higher on the Braves, but I still think the Phillies can get the job done there, and the Phillies can beat the Mets. We've seen the Phillies beat the Mets when they weren't even good last couple of seasons, and in more ways. The Mets, just ask Mets fans, but now that they are good, because let's take an even bigger look real quick at people who are really trying to wrap their head around how do you have the Phillies in the playoffs. Besides the weak division thing, let's get past that. You're talking about a young team that has a really good offense and has really good players coming up from the minor leagues, a la the 2015 Chicago Cubs and even the 2017 New York Yankees. And even, so they're talking about teams that are kind of there too early, right? Everyone was talking about last year, the Yankees are a team that's going to be great in 18 and 19, right? But they made the playoffs and then made the ALCS. And the Game 7 in the ALCS should have won the World Series, right? A lot of Yankee fans right there. You're there with me. Same thing with the Cubs. They were a team that people were like, all right, 16, 17. This is when the Cubs are maybe going to be a playoff team. They make it with the third best record in all of baseball in 2015. So they get there early. Add the fact that you're bringing in a playoff experienced pitcher and a guy who's looking to win in Jake Arrieta. It just puts even more faith for me in this Phillies team. With an underrated top two now, right? With Arrieta coming off a down year, and then Aaron Nola. A lot of people might not know how good of a pitcher Aaron Nola is. So that offense is going to be really good. I have them making the playoffs because it is kind of a theme of these teams that are overachieving in certain parts. Like this Phillies team is supposed to be really good in 2019 or 2020, and look, they're going to be really good this year and make the playoffs. So that's who I have. Who do I have also competing? Of course, the Mets. Of course, the other teams that I mentioned in the Rockies and the Giants in the West, and then and definitely the Cardinals and the Brewers. They will all be there competing for those spots too. And then, of course, I expect your tweets at EricH1045 when the Phillies aren't even close. I really do. The idiot. You're an idiot tweets. I really expect them. So. That's my playoff teams. I'm going to give you my World Series prediction really quick here. My World Series prediction is the New York Yankees winning in 6 games over the Washington Nationals in Bryce Harper's swan song season with the Nationals. Probably he gets to the World Series and the loss makes him want to leave. Or does it? I don't really know. I can't really make a huge prediction on that, but I do think that the Nationals will get there. I think Scherzer and Strasburg will be really good in the playoffs. The reason why I have and then I'm going to go off a theme here real quick. And part of me wants to say this, wait for it to actually happen before you say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I just made the parallel between the 2015 and 2017 Yankees. And it's a similar parallel. They both got to they both made the playoffs as a surprise team, quote unquote, that made the playoffs. That weren't necessarily supposed to. It was like their success came early, quote unquote. They both make the championship series. Now one got swept and one got to a Game 7. And both teams in the subsequent offseason trade Starlin Castro. So based off that theme, that's why I think the Yankees are going to win the World Series. Could be a homer move too. But listen, I think that this could be the opposite of poetic justice. Poetic injustice. Hashtag poetic injustice for Starlin Castro to be a guy who's traded from a championship series team twice, and then the next year that team gets a ring. You know what? That's the reason why I have the Yankees winning. And I didn't give you the team that they have them. Oh, I do. The Nationals. The team that have them being the Washington Nationals. Listen, I already gave you my reasons on them, and I think that Victor Robles will be up, and I think he'll be actually a big reason. I think it'll be a huge playoff reason. Let that merge right into my MVP awards and my awards, just my awards in general. MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year. I'll start with the MVP, and I'll merge right into it. I think Trey Turner is going to be my MVP. I'm kind of bearing the lead here because that's actually a surprise, right? Not many people are picking Trey Turner. You have a lot of people picking Bryce Harper. You even have some people picking Anthony Rendon. But Chris Bryant, Joey Votto are popular picks. Nolan Arenado, a popular pick. And I think it's based on, well, AKA my prediction on the Colorado Rockies, I don't think people are going to say, you know what, a fourth place team's going to get an MVP. And then B, he's already not gotten love for great statistics in Colorado. So what makes them all of a sudden say, you know what, we really value not only how good his bat is, how good his glove is, we're going to all of a sudden give him the MVP now? I mean, I really hope it happens for Arenado, but I really have Trey Turner. And the reason I have Trey Turner is I think he could be a definitely 2020 guy. I think he'll hit over 20 if he's healthy all year. We haven't seen a full season of Trey Turner yet. And so if you're telling me Trey Turner, there's no guarantee he hits over 300, but if you can tell me if he hits over 300, and I'm saying he is, but there's no guarantee, hits over 300, hits 20 to 25 home runs, which isn't out of the question, and steals over 60 bases, which also isn't out of the question. And they have the most runs scored, and he has the most runs scored on this team. And they're a first-place team again, one of the best teams in the National League. Obviously, if Bryce Harper has a Bryce Harper-type year and he has over 40 home runs and over 120 RBIs or something close to that and still batted .320, obviously he's going to get a lot of the attention. But the reason why I have Trey Turner is because he'll be the table setter of this lineup. And if he's in the 20s of the home runs and he has over 60 stolen bases and he's hitting close to 300 or over 300, that's a Jose Altuve-type season and then some. Like, he'll have more stolen bases than Jose Altuve did. He'll have right around the area where Altuve had in home runs in his MVP year last year. So if Altuve is getting that kind of recognition, why wouldn't Trey Turner get that recognition? And I think he has that potential to do that this year. So Trey Turner is my MVP pick. It's a surprise one. I think it's a lot of ones that people are picking. I'm looking at some of the players on ESPN who they've picked, and Tommy Pham is one. So that's a surprise one, too. I think that's even more out there than mine. But I'm going with Trey Turner, the shortstop of the Washington Nationals. My American League MVP is not going to be as out there. It's not going to be as radical, if you will. It's going to be straightforward. It's Mike Trout. And it's simply because they're going to be a better team, A, and he won this award when they were a really bad team. And then B, he actually had his best statistical year last year in terms of pace, right? You know what I mean? Like, last year, if you look at his numbers from last year, the pace that he was on those teams, in those games, last year kind of were pretty crazy when you look at it. And let me pull him up here. His numbers last year: 33 home runs, 72 RBIs, 94 runs batted in, batted .306. And you might say, that's a full season for somebody, right? He also stole 22 bases. 442 on base percentage. Highest of his career by .001, but still. So he had one of the best on base percentages of all of baseball. 33 home runs, 72 RBIs, and 22 stolen bases, like I said, batted .306. That was in 200 less at-bats than he had in 2014 when he had 3 more home runs, albeit 40 more RBIs, and 6 less stolen bases, and batted .287. So you're talking about a guy that was on pace to have his best season. If he still batted to where he was, you can add like 17 more home runs, get him around 50, probably have him above 111 right around 111 RBIs. And stolen base-wise, he could be around 33, 34. That's one of the best seasons he's ever had. And it probably is the best season he ever had. So that's why I have him where he is. And obviously the defense in center field should help his case too. I mean, I'm not sure the defense really helps MVP cases as much as they should because Arenado would have won those 2 years. But I digress. No surprise, Mike Trout is my MVP pick. Sticking in the American League, who is my Cy Young pick? And it's once again, it's not out of the box. It's for the second year in a row, Corey Kluber. And the reason is he's going to be the best pitcher on the best pitching staff and the best team possibly record-wise in all of American League. All American League. Chris Sale seems to be the most popular vote. Kluber's number 2. Severino actually is getting a lot of pull. And, listen, I have a lot of faith in Sevy, but to put up as good of numbers he did last year, I think, especially when you make predictions, you kind of want to go with the guy you know is going to do really good, and that's why it's Corey Kluber. He's so good. I don't have enough faith in Justin Verlander to think, you know what, okay, he might be the best player on the Astros, best pitcher on the Astros. I'm not sure I can really, see that. And we saw what Chris Sale kind of struggled toward the end of last year. So he didn't really, he put up a crazy strikeout year, but we kind of know that his ERA tends to kind of balloon at times. So by balloon, I mean still, hanging at a pretty darn good 3.0, 3.5 for the season, but he can let up his fair share of runs. I think Corey Kluber is the most consistent out of all these guys we're talking about, and that's why he's probably a safe pick, but also the favorite in my personal opinion, and the guy that I am going with. In the National League, it's also more the same of kind of now more radical, right? Trey Turner was radical as the MVP pick, but it's more of the same. I got to go Clayton Kershaw, and the reason why is because he hasn't won it in so long, and in so long, I mean, Scherzer's won it the last 2 years, but listen, I really, really think a full season's going to happen this year for Clayton Kershaw, not another injury. Although it's happened in the last 2 years, he's had an injury that kept him out for at least a month. I think he'll be fine for most of the season. That could be a huge jinx. Sorry, Dodgers fans. And that means that he's going to get a full season. In a full season, either of the last 2 years, he's the Cy Young Award winner. So it's kind of the same logic I had with Mike Trout. Full season from Clayton Kershaw, he's the no-brainer Cy Young. That's why I have him as my pick. Another popular pick, other than Scherzer, is Steven Strasburg, and he had a really good ERA. As I got to give credit to David Schoenfield of ESPN, some credit that points out he had a .84 ERA over his final 8 starts in 2017, and he threw two really good games in the playoffs as well. So obviously he has injury problems, but if you keep that up for 32 starts, which he won't, but if he's anywhere close to that for 2/3, I could see him definitely winning it over Scherzer or even Kershaw. Mets fans, Noah Syndergaard probably is another guy that I would put on that list as well. Let's go into Rookie of the Years, and I'm going to go to the AL for my Rookie of the Year. And let me preface this by saying the favorite is Shohei Ohtani, rightfully so. I'm not. But I said in the American League West podcast, if you haven't listened to it, that I do think Ohtani is going to have a good year on the mound. But does that necessarily warrant him the Rookie of the Year? It depends how good a year it is. And so I think if he's hovering around 3.7, which is still a good year, it depends on how many wins he has. If he's winning over 17 games, I give it to him. And I know people are like, oh, that's an archaic stat. I still gonna give it wins more than maybe other people do. This means your team's winning ball games. You're staying in games long enough to keep your team in games and win the games. I still value that win total, that win mark for a pitcher, especially more in single seasons, maybe more than career. Fine, if you want me to narrow it down to that, it's a whole different conversation for a Hall of Fame podcast. So that being said, as much as I want to go with the Yankee Gleyber Torres, who I think will definitely be in the running at some point this season, I'm going to go with another guy in the American League West podcast that I said needs to be good for his team, and that's Willie Calhoun. I see him up within the first month. He's down in the minor leagues. He'll be up, and I think he's going to rake. I think he'll hit 25-plus home runs. I think he'll hit over 300 as well. And so that's why I think Willie Calhoun will be the Rookie of the Year in the American League. Really, him, Torres, and Ohtani are really the only three right now that we really see as guys who can really hang into it. Other guys that got votes are Michael Kopech, which we saw him get beat up in spring. So even though he might make his debut for the White Sox, I'm not sure it will be enough because the way they handled Lucas Giolito, he didn't come up until too late. But he might not get enough starts. Kopech might not. And then he really didn't show enough promise for me to really say, he'll pitch enough games and be good enough to actually outshine a guy like Ohtani, who'll be up all year and who has shown that he, on a high level in Japan, that he can really get the job done. That's just my 2 cents. But Kopech, the question just went into my head. If you're starting a franchise right now and you could pick between Ohtani and Kopech, like you had to pick between those two and you could have either one, I probably would pick Kopech. That's how good Kopech really his potential is. But for this season, I think Ohtani has the higher ceiling. And excuse me, Willie Calhoun, though, is my pick for American League Rookie of the Year for the Texas Rangers. Last but not least, certainly not least, the National League Rookie of the Year. And once again, you might think I'm going chalk with Ronald Acuna. And once again, you would be wrong, baby. I mentioned him once in this podcast already. My NL Rookie of the Year pick is Ryan McMahon. I think he's going to carve out a everyday position in the National League, with the Rockies, and be the National League Rookie of the Year. I like the idea of Lewis Brinson, Scott Kingery, guys we know are going to get at bats, but I think Ryan McMahon is going to put together a heck of a season for the Rockies. That's how good I really think he can be at first base for them. I mean, listen, he has his work cut out for him if he struggles. So I think that he'll have a really good year, but there is that potential of, he might not get everyday at bats. While Acuna, Brinson, and Brinson are going to get everyday at bats this season at some point. That's if you believe the Braves are going to bring up Acuna up in the summer, which I do, but service time, you never really know. Another guy I'd like to mention, obviously I said Scott Kingery. Scott Kingery is going to have a really good year, I think. He'll probably end up carving out a second place or second base or a third place role for them at some point with the struggles possibly from Hernandez or Franco. So he's the guy that would probably be my second pick. And my third pick actually would be Jesse Winker of the Cincinnati Reds. So keep your eye on a guy like him as well. I think his on-base percentage is for real. It's right on par with his fellow teammate, Joey Votto. So I really like what he can bring. But National League Rookie of the Year pick is Ryan McMahon. If you have any other questions for me, you can tweet at me at EricH1045. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Other than that, I really appreciate you listening to the Sittin Sportside podcast and all of the MLB preview podcasts. I will be checking in at some point here on the Sittin Sportside podcast, maybe with a guest or two at some point throughout the season, not only talking about the MLB baseball and certain players that I like and certain things going on in terms of fantasy and whatnot, just in general, MLB things, but all other sports as well. NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs are coming up. NFL offseason obviously has been in full swing, so it could be interesting things to talk about there. Tennis, the major season for tennis and golf all coming up, so you could see some Sittin Sportside podcasts coming up all over the place. So, I'm Eric Hanman. Really appreciate you listening to these podcasts. Thank you for listening. You can find those podcasts at Sittin Sportside Podcast on the youtube.com/team1045 playlist and on 1045theteam.com. Just look for the podcast tab and click on the Sittin Sportside Podcast. I can finally say it, baby. Let's play some baseball. Have a great 2018 baseball season. We'll see you next time.